Hey all, this is Jason from GameRave.com, otherwise known as Danger Boy, and this is Game Rave TV. Due to technical difficulties, there will not be a normal episode of Game Rave this week, so instead I figured I would just sit down and kind of have like a nice little coffee talk with you guys about what I would like to see with the PlayStation 4. And I even have my coffee. Pardon me for a sec. But right now it's July, and this is more or less the crunch time for the launch day games for the systems, both PS4 and Xbox One. And in doing so, while those guys are all in their bunkers, you know, programming away and sweating in sweatshop conditions, etc., I'd like to talk to Sony directly as an open letter. And as the biggest PlayStation fan, certified by Sony, and you guys, love you, I figured I'd give my top 5 hopes and dreams for the PlayStation 4. And this comes from owning a PlayStation 1 since almost day one, and having the PlayStation 2 and the PSP and the PlayStation 3 and the Vita up until this point. So basically, open letter from your biggest PlayStation fan as far as the PlayStation 4 is concerned. Number 5, counting down. With the PlayStation 4, you have to respect the indies and make the PlayStation 4 their safe haven. I touched upon this in the Saturn video from a couple weeks ago, and I want to reiterate. You spent all that time and energy in having all these indie devs on stage at E3, and this would be the absolute greatest time to just bring them in under your arm, pay for exclusives, do what you have to do to make sure they are not only loyal to you, but you are loyal to them. They will be a huge stepping stone for you guys, and they will actually be the filler games in between the AAA titles. Like, I'll be flat out honest, I have an Ouya. I kickstarted it just because I thought it was kind of goofy for $100. Why not? And as a person who doesn't play PC games and doesn't care for an all-digital future, I'm loving my Ouya, and it got me to, with the 100% free to try every game, it got me to play games I would never play before because there was a free demo available for it, and that was amazing. Like, as soon as my next paycheck comes, I'll probably be picking up a $25 Ouya card, and I'll be giving indies some of my money, and that's unheard of for me, because I normally don't even bat an eye at them. So make sure you, as a company, bring them under your wing and do whatever it is you have to make sure you please them. And indies, don't abuse Sony. Make it nice and fair. Number 4, continue the exclusives. And by exclusives, this can be anything. From exclusive titles to exclusive third parties to exclusive indie games. What made the PS3 interesting in its life cycle was the little spitballs. And by spitballs, I mean like when Medal of Honor came out and you gave people the Medal of Honor Airborne PS2 game for free, or when Revelations came out, you gave Assassin's Creed 1 for free on the launch day ones. Stuff like that. Even if it's like Assassin's Creed 3 even had the 4 exclusive missions with Benedict Arnold, I think. The little stuff like that, it's those little spitballs that, while at the surface, maybe like, oh, you know, don't worry about it, I'm not that interested. If you keep seeing that, that is huge, and people will start paying attention to that. I'll be honest, I love my 360, and if it weren't for the fact that I absolutely hated the PS3's slow downloads, and I didn't care for PlayStation Network, and all the installs and freaking updates, with all the free stuff they were giving away, I probably would have likely bought all those games for PS3 instead of eventually playing them for Xbox 360. With the PS4's more or less instant download and DLC on a chip, you know, program thing going, that's going to be huge. And if you can continue not nitpicking, but just cherry picking away like that, huge. That'll be amazing. 3, you have PlayStation Plus. It's time to make it multiply. And what I mean by that is PlayStation Plus in and of itself is more or less right now just a discount card, and for the PlayStation 4, for those of you who don't know, it's going to be required for multiplayer, which more or less makes it Xbox Live now. That being said, while there weren't enough games for myself to justify the $60 a year price tag, what you guys have been doing in the last few months of PlayStation 3 with the full free games, like the full free Vita games, stuff like that, that is amazing. And like I think I've downloaded like 20 games that I'll probably never get to, but the fact that I have them for free just from owning that little card is amazing. And I think going forward, PlayStation 4, if you could actually make it a real discount card, not just on select titles, but work it out so like if you have PlayStation Plus, you can get 5%, 10% off anything at any time. You'd have a really, really interesting dedicated user base. I mean, if I knew I could get a brand new game for 10% cheaper just because I, wait for it to download, I would seriously start considering not buying physical copies. And for me, as a person who's got 1,300 plus PlayStation 1 games trapped in a room, that's a huge step. And you guys are just obliterating Xbox One or Xbox 360 with that angle. And they're starting to copy you right now with the free copies of Fable 3 and Assassin's Creed 2. Way to go, 5-year-old games. But seriously, like, take a hard, long look. I know there's worries about undercutting retailers and so forth, but if a retailer can sell a discount card and gets a percentage off a used game, there is no reason why you guys can't sell a discount card and get a discount off a new digital game, especially since it's not costing the publisher as much because there's no physical packaging. If you can figure out how to make that an absolute, like, just blanket universal discount card, holy crap, you guys would be amazing. 2, bury the ego, wield the humor. Now, the reason Xbox One is having all these problems right now is because Microsoft is basically emulating Sony pre-PS3 launch. Now, I know most of us have short-term memory and don't remember 6 or 7 years ago, but going into the PlayStation 3 era, Sony had the most annoying ego on the planet. When you have Jack Tretton and Kaz Hirai, and I can't remember his other name, saying things like they expect people to have 2 jobs to pay for the PlayStation 3, and they know they'll spend $600 on a PlayStation 3 even if there's no games available, all quotes, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And when the PS3 was getting its ass kicked in the first 6 months, where it was losing all of its exclusives, or things that were exclusive were coming to Xbox 360 first, that was a bad time, and that was a bad sign. It didn't help with the yellow light of death, but 360 just completely obliterated that with rear lights. But anyway, forget the ego. It's not about ego anymore. It's about supporting the customers and the indie devs and having fun with it. At E3 2013, the "we support used games" comment was the most beautiful 1995 Sony era comment ever. I was laughing my tits off at it. If you guys can forego that, like, we're number one, we don't need blah blah blah, and just have fun with your own system, like you've been trying to do, like how Mark Cerny said, we're going back to the devs and giving them the dev system they want. Us gamers are looking for the game company that's one of us. We want the person we can have a beer with, or in this case, coffee. If you can advertise that system and talk about that system and carry that system with a humor and just good-natured truth and no bullshit, sleight of hand wording or egos, you will just absolutely destroy Xbox One. And they're already digging themselves out of holes, both with the backpedaling on the DRM and the 3 OSs at once RAM issue. But like I said, just keep doing what you're doing. It'll be amazing. And last but not least, the number one piece of advice I can give Sony, and this comes from the heart, and that is you need to remember your heritage. There's a reason PlayStation All-Stars bombed and you closed down the shop. The reason Smash Brothers works is because they had over, God, it's 30 years now. They had 30 years of history to work with. The original Mario, the original Metroid, the original Zelda, Kid Icarus. Half of those characters started life as an 8-bit character 30 years ago. Now, granted, you weren't around that long, like you were talking 95 here, but when you have an all-star PlayStation cast and there's no jumping flash and there's no siphon filter, there's so many games from your lineage that were just ignored, and to this day as a whole, just like from a sequel or reboot process, that are just gone, that it really, really hurts you in the long run. There's nothing for gamers to latch onto. It also doesn't help when you try and reboot an older game and do it in 100% wrong or different way. Like, I was ecstatic when you showed the reboot Starhawk idea with that fake art image showing 1,000 fucking planes in the air. And when the final version came out, it was disheartening. It had nothing to do with Starhawk. It was, or Warhawk in this case. Starhawk's a whole different thing. B, as I mentioned, like with Jumping Flash and Siphon Filter, like all these PS1 era games that were like legends in their time, like Wipeout, Parappa, Jumping Flash, Raiden Project wasn't really you guys, but still. And there's other stuff, they're all just being swept under the rug and left behind. Like, I would be shocked if God of War even makes it to the PlayStation 4, because it's just been beaten to death this, generation. You need to go back to your archives to like the day one PlayStation launch and look at those games that made you guys the most amazing. Like, if you can sit down and get Mark Cerny back in the saddle, talk to Universal, get Crash back, get Spyro back. Croc technically wasn't that bad, but if you can bring characters back that were more Mario than Mario was, because me personally, I don't care for Ratchet and Clank or Sly Cooper or Jak and Daxter. They just didn't have the heart that Crash and Spyro and Mario, for this matter, do. If you can bring back that Gen 1 PlayStation feeling, where it was the cool machine to have, it was the fun machine, the commercials where you were just making fun of each other, like, that would be a golden era again. And as much crap as I gave the PlayStation 3 and basically was driven away from the PS2, I have a PlayStation 4 pre-ordered. I want to love this machine. I want this to be just like 1995 all over again, where after owning the system for a couple of years, I'd say, you know what? We need a Game Rave for this. We need to track every game. It would be amazing to do a PlayStation 4 Game Rave website, but I need to know that you guys will carry that heritage you have and carry it correctly, because when PlayStation 5 comes along, I would love to know that there are sequels to the PlayStation 4 games I loved. On that note, see you guys next week. Take care, guys. Have a good one.